early. We have a full slate today, so I'd ask that you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd ask that you stay standing, and as we honor the achievements of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. Today, I thought it only fitting that we share one of his prayers. Oh God, we thank you for the lives of great saints and prophets in the past who have revealed to us that we can stand up amid the problems and difficulties and trials of life and not give in. We thank you for our foreparents who've given us something in the midst of darkness, of exploitation and oppression to keep going. Grant that we will go on with the proper faith and the proper determination of will so that we will be able to make a creative contribution to this world. In the name of the Spirit of Jesus, we pray. Amen. You may be seated. And not only did the late Martin Luther King Jr. leave a legacy of service, that's something that we strive as Rotarians to do day in and day out. And at this time, I want to honor one of our Rotarians who did that for the past 36 years. And as many of you are aware, Sandy Frentz served her last day with the City of Sioux Falls Health Department on Friday. She joined Rotary in 2015. She was sponsored by Tony Burke. She served 2 terms on our board. She also served as our media relations chair. Many of us, myself included, have had the pleasure of working alongside Sandy. Don't take my word for it, take the words of her coworker, Denise Patton, who's the health program coordinator. This is what she says about Sandy. People know Sandy as this incredible, passionate, driven woman that eats, sleeps, and breathes health. She's so enthusiastic and positive and just driven by the mission of the health department. You can't help but feel that energy and be driven by it too. Sandy, I'd ask you to come forward at this time. And for a career committed to our city and our broader community, I would like you to join me in saying thank you to Sandy Frentz for 36 years. We are going to name her a Paul Harris Fellow. And on behalf of Downtown Rotary, I'm honored to go ahead and present that to her right now. So please join me in thanking Sandy Frentz. Okay. All right. Thank you. Sandy, all 36 of those years were special, but the last couple, you ended it on a bang. So thank you for all the work that you and your counterparts at the city have contributed. And like I said, today we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr., a life of service, a legacy of service, and Sandy Frentz, you're leaving a legacy of service as well. Turning to some Rotary business, it's a new year for us, and with a new year, we have a new LinkedIn page. Be sure to follow that new page, and if you go back to your email that you received this morning, there is a link to that new LinkedIn page. I would ask you to take notice. We'll include that the next couple Mondays, so you have an opportunity, and we're going to work to share more content through that channel. Next, we have a new member induction. I actually have the opportunity of introducing this new Rotarian to downtown Sioux Falls. John Schemmel is Dakota State University's Vice President for Institutional Advancement. He is familiar with higher education in South Dakota as he was the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Development at the University of South Dakota for 6 years. That's where he and I first crossed paths. Most recently, he has been the Senior Associate Athletic Director and Assistant Vice President of Development at Miami University, where he held that role since 2017. December of 2020, he moved back to South Dakota. He's got strong ties. Both his parents are from Madison, South Dakota, so it was a natural fit. And at Dakota State, he's leveraging his experience with strategic planning, collaboration, revenue generation to lead the foundation and the alumni team in support of not only academics, but athletics. There's a lot happening up at Dakota State, as you all know, and I like to think that we're just getting started. It's my alma mater, and excited about the work that's happening up there. John played college baseball at the University of Minnesota and Concordia University, St. Paul. Went on to play professional baseball with the New York Mets and San Diego Padres, making it as high as AAA. He graduated college from San Diego State University. John and his wife Heidi reside in Madison with their 5-year-old son, Jameson. I'd now ask John to come forward and share a few words.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you all for having me here. The first thing I was going to do was give a little background on myself, but I think Tony just did a pretty good job of that. Like he mentioned, we have really strong ties to the state of South Dakota and the community of Madison. If the last name Schemmel is familiar to any of you in this room, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. My dad would always be upset with me if I didn't let people know that he's still, I think, the mile record holder here in the state of South Dakota. He ran a 4:12 mile back in like the 60s and still holds that record. And he's only got 2 fake hips to show for it. He was he was an All-American at Kansas State and had a great career and all of that, but a lot of surgeries since then. Then my uncle Jerry Schemmel was in the United 232 plane crash in Sioux City, Iowa, and survived and wrote a book on it and things like that. And he does a lot of speaking. I'm sure some in this room have heard him before. So, but like Tony said, my wife Heidi, we've been married almost 10 years. We have a son who just turned 6 since I filled out the form to join here. And we just added a dog back to our family, so we're back to 4 over the holidays. So excited to be back in South Dakota. It's been about a year. Very quick moving, like Tony said, a lot going on at Dakota State. I was always on this athletics path, Division I athletics, chasing that dream, always down the fundraising line, and but always had an interest in the institution as a whole. And when this opportunity first came up at Dakota State, my grandparents were really the ones that kind of strong-armed me into applying, and I finally applied just to kind of get them off my back. And when I got going in the interview process and then had my one-on-one with President Griffiths, the response that I gave, because we were living in Ohio at the time, we were 3.5 years removed from what was going on here, was really just, you're trying to do what at Dakota State? And you're doing what in Madison, South Dakota? And for me, how could I not want to be a part of that? And so it's incredible what President Griffiths has brought to Dakota State and to the community of Madison. I'm very, very excited to be there and be a part of it, really, and just bring it in. She's taking care of all the crazy cyber stuff, and she's asked me to come in and help with the athletics facilities and get some more traditional fundraising going, because Dakota State's really not put their priorities there in years past. So excited to be a part of that. And I think too, just why Rotary for me really is simple. Your mission talks very simply about service over self. And really that's what I've kind of fallen in love with in my professional career and personal life. Started working in sales after my baseball career was over. And there was just something missing. It just wasn't quite enough. And when I got into fundraising, that point of serving something and being a part of something bigger than myself was really, it was like being a part of a team, and what I experienced my whole life. And that really kind of filled that void. And being back in South Dakota, it was one of those things. My wife and I built our first house in Sioux Falls. We moved down to Vermilion. And then we went to Ohio. And for us, and we grew up in the Twin Cities, we loved South Dakota while we were here the first time, and we didn't realize how much we loved it until we left. And we were so excited to have the opportunity to come back, and looking forward to doing great things back in the state. So thank you all for allowing me to join this group, and look forward to working with and getting to know you all over the years. Thank you.
As we take a photo, I'm going to invite Eric Erickson to come up, and he is going to highlight mentoring once again for us as we go throughout this month. So Eric?
Thank you, President Tony. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. This being National Mentoring Month in the United States, we're taking a little time each of our weeks to highlight mentoring because the one relevant it that you as Rotarians are supporting is mentoring through the Sioux 52 initiative. Today, we're going to hear from Emmett Kaiser. Emmett is the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks Region 3 Wildlife Supervisor. He's been with the department in a lot of different roles for nearly 40 years. And for more than 10 of those years, he was a legislative lobbyist for the GFNP. He's a native of South Dakota. He grew up in Watertown, where he learned his love for the outdoors and the glacial lakes region. He's a graduate of Sioux Falls Lincoln High School, and he earned both his bachelor's and his master's in wildlife and fishery sciences at SDSU. Emmett and his wife Karen live in Brandon. They have 2 children. So please welcome Emmett Kaiser from the Game Fish and Parks.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Great day, obviously, with the celebration of the life of Martin Luther King, but also wanted to thank the club for their efforts to reach out and learn about mentoring and actually sponsor a website, Sioux 52, where people can learn about all the opportunities to mentor. Mentoring is a big part of Game Fish and Parks. Most of you may be aware that a lot of state fish and wildlife agencies back in the 1980s began to see declining participation rates in hunting and fishing. Didn't really hit South Dakota till probably the late 90s and early 2000s. We had a little surge in wildlife populations due to CRP, and our pheasant numbers grew during that time. But nonetheless, we began to see, even in South Dakota, where hunting and fishing had been a tradition for many, many decades, we saw a decline in participation at all levels. It's in our agency, we're totally funded with license fee dollars and also with federal aid dollars that come to us through taxes that are placed on hunting ammunition, firearms, rods and reels, and other kinds of equipment associated with hunting and fishing industry. Those 2 sources of revenue provide annually probably over 90% of the revenue to the department. So if we see a declining in participation, one of the concerns, of course, we have is who's going to pay the bills and who's going to allow us to do these good things to provide access opportunities through our walk-in program, habitat management, both on public and private lands, to ensure that we have wildlife populations out in our state. Who's going to provide the funding for us to do the good things we do at our 2 outdoor campus facilities? So decline in participation is, of course, very much a concern. Our department works on the access side. We work obviously with private landowners to enroll them in our walk-in access program. We've got another important program called the Conservation Reserve and Enhancement Program that was implemented in the James River watershed. And by the way, we're in the early stages of developing a similar program called the Big Sioux River Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. So we look to kick that off in the next few years as well. Essentially, these lands are areas where we develop CRP habitat, but they also have access opportunities to the hunting on those properties, provided in part through funding provided by Game Fish and Parks. At the outdoor campus, our primary focus, of course, is on education. And education does play a critical role in getting folks into the outdoors, not only creating advocates for conservation, advocates for wildlife and wildlife habitat, and all the associated recreational opportunities, but it's critical that we continue to reach out and engage not only young people, but folks of every age. Our department began a Becoming an Outdoor Woman program probably over 20 some years ago now. We also reach out regularly to colleges, college-age kids, and adults that we're finding that many adults who are into what we call the locavore side of living, they're interested in where their food comes from. And so it's important to reach out and engage those folks too, and let them know about all the wonderful opportunities we have here in South Dakota to participate in not just hunting and fishing, but other outdoor recreational opportunities as well. Game Fish and Parks started a Hunting 101 program this last year. It's a kind of a total one-size-fits-all program where we offer all the opportunities to teach people about hunting. Not only we'll teach them firearm safety, but we also teach them the tactics to use in hunting. We teach them how to approach landowners and ask permission. We teach them about the importance of wildlife habitat, especially in working with private landowners to see what we can do to enhance their properties. We take them out in the field. They get a chance to harvest their first deer. In some cases, we even have a program aimed at harvesting turkeys. Some of these programs actually take place here within the city of Sioux Falls. We've been able to work with the Sioux Falls city government, staff at the water department, and also our city animal control to help reduce both deer numbers and turkey numbers. So it's an exciting time for us at Game Fish and Parks. Our 2 outdoor campuses, the one here in Sioux Falls, been here since 1997, I believe we opened the doors, and Rapid City's outdoor campus has been around almost 10 years now as well. So we're excited at the Hunting 101 program, but what we need is more mentors. And mentors play a critical role. I had a fortunate opportunity where my dad taught me how to hunt and fish along with my brother, and my mom actually hunted as well. In fact, I shot my first deer with my mom. The importance of families in the outdoors can be understated, and so we're looking for mentors, those that want to participate, but we're also looking for volunteers to work at the outdoor campus and assist us with our various programs. So if you might be interested in a mentoring program, I know we did distribute some information on the tables. If you're interested in becoming a volunteer, please contact us. Be more than happy to tell you about our programs and the opportunities. Mentoring can also be accomplished without the aid of our education program. In fact, it's critical that we all continue to look for opportunities and get those, not just young people, but folks who've never had the opportunity to enjoy the great resources we have here in South Dakota, to get them outdoors. So with that, we have about a 3-minute video, and I'm going to ask to play the video. And I sure appreciate, again, the opportunity to come and speak before you, and thank you so much for what you do for our city.
At the outdoor campus, we've started a mentorship program that helps new hunters become more comfortable hunting in hopes of building a lifelong passion for the sport. We're looking for experienced hunters to join our team of mentors and train the next generation of outdoor enthusiasts. Our mentors describe the experience as very fulfilling.
Being able to mentor young people in hunting gives me an opportunity to recapture some of that youthful enthusiasm that I had way back when. If you can recapture that youthful enthusiasm, that excitement, that massive adrenaline surge that these kids get when they have an opportunity to shoot their first animal, it keeps you going.
It's great to see them, especially if they're able to get a deer, you know. It gets me more excited probably than it does get them excited.
It's a little like grandparents having kids for Christmas morning. You may not have gotten revved up for Christmas for 25, 30 years, but boy, when those grandkids come over and you see the excitement of opening those presents, it all comes back to you. Your youth comes back to you.
Our Hunting 101 program is a comprehensive hunting course. The course takes students of all backgrounds and all ages through the process of purchasing a mentor tag or an apprentice tag, to range time, harvesting a deer, and finally processing that deer. We meet students where they are in their skill level of hunting. We know that people feel more confident and comfortable when they have the support of an experienced mentor to lead them through their first or even second hunt. That's where our mentor program comes in. We're always looking for mentors to take students on their first or second supported hunt. Game Fish and Parks provides all the necessary tools. Mentors just need the desire to share their passion and excitement of hunting.
If you have ever thought that you might want to teach a young person how to hunt or fish, or any of the other things that you're passionate about, just do it, because it will pay you back far more than what it costs you in time.
If you're wanting to become a mentor, I'd say do it, because you're going to be helping individuals. You're going to be actually making a big impact on them. I love it. It's a great experience for both you and the mentee.
If you'd like to foster the next generation of hunters, please reach out to Game Fish and Park's mentorship program.
Don't think of right off the bat. As they're making their way to the front of the stage, I welcome South Dakota House Majority Leader Kent Peterson and Minority Leader Jamie Smith. They're no strangers to our stage here at Rotary, and were with us about a year ago. I want to thank in advance longtime Rotarian Jack Marsh for moderating today's conversation. With that, Jack, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Tony, got your attention now. I am Jack Marsh. I'm a longtime member of Sioux Falls Downtown Rotary, former president of the club, and privileged to be the moderator of this afternoon's program. It is titled "The State of the State Legislature," a discussion and Q&A with Republican Kent Peterson, who's the majority leader of the South Dakota House of Representatives, and Democrat Jamie Smith, the minority leader of the South Dakota House. The annual 2-month session of the South Dakota State Legislature opened last week with Republican Kristi Noem delivering her State of the State address, building on her earlier state budget presentation, then assessing the successes and challenges of South Dakota from her perspective and laying out her legislative priorities. Republicans enjoy a supermajority, I should say a super majority over the Democrats, holding 94 of 105 seats in Pierre. Republicans also occupy every constitutional office and all 3 seats in the U.S. congressional delegation. Democrats, therefore, are far outnumbered among our elected officials. In fact, State Representative Jamie Smith, as the House Minority Leader, and Senator Troy Heinert, the Senate Minority Leader, are the 2, I think this is correct, the 2 highest ranking Democratic elected officials in the state. Is that not correct, Jamie?
That's what they tell me.
Okay, there you go. To open this program this morning, I'd like both Representative Peterson and Representative Smith to sort of give us their 30,000-foot view of the state of the legislature, how well the people of the state are being served by our state legislature. And I'd like to begin by sharing with you excerpts from a column that was published by the Rapid City Journal on December 31st. It's written by Dana Hess. Dana is a longtime South Dakota editor and reporter. And for, I think, the last 6 legislative sessions, covered the legislature for South Dakota daily newspapers and weekly newspapers. So I share this without endorsement, just to stimulate some conversation up here. So this is in a greatly condensed version of the article. I'd be glad to, I have copies of the full version, or you can check it out on the Rapid City Journal website. For the past 6 years, I have been writing about South Dakota legislature. Well, enough is enough. I just couldn't take the crazy any longer. I couldn't take the effort wasted on legislation that's designed to bully and hurt. I couldn't muster the vigor it takes to write objectively about resolutions that are good for nothing more than political posturing. Each year, the largely Republican legislature seems to have its priorities in the wrong place. With elections for every seat in the legislature in 2022, during the upcoming session, the more moderate Republicans may find themselves trying to defy gravity as they hold their noses and vote for some wacko right-wing bills rather than face primary challenges for not being conservative enough. If I had to place bets on the outcome of the next legislative session, I'd say that some lawmakers will be working overtime to enhance their conservative credentials. In journalism circles in South Dakota, we often bemoan the fact that there are fewer and fewer reporters writing about the legislature. Now there's one less, and I feel bad about that, but not bad enough to force myself back into the press box and try to write objectively about legislation and resolutions that I know are silly, symbolic, wrong-headed, and cruel. I share that without endorsement, but I would like, that's a pretty strong position. And I'd ask both the representatives, both the leaders, to reflect on that.
Sure. I'll go first. My name is Kent Peterson. This is Jamie over here. Thanks for having us, by the way. And we're going to jump right into it, right? And so that's one person's opinion, but it's, you know, we can argue whether it's accurate or not. The reality of South Dakota politics and South Dakota legislature is this. Any person can bring any bill or resolution at any time. And within that, I think last year we had 500 to 600 bills and resolutions. Mostly bills. I think we had roughly 20 resolutions. So I do my South Dakota Salem math, that's about 2%. Now, oftentimes the 1 or 2% get a lot of the headlines. That's no different. They've got a job to do too. So as I look at that, I don't disagree with everything that's said in that article or that editorial piece, I guess it would be, on somebody that's walking out the door. It's frustrating at times. You know, we do things that some might say, why are you worried about that? Well, to somebody, it's important. And it's not up to me as the leader of the House to say, you can't do that. I'm never going to do that. My job is to build consensus. And my job is to look at all the issues that come in front of us and say, how does this affect South Dakota? And I think we do an okay job of that when it's all said and done. Now, along the way, as we call it, the sausage making process can be ugly. That's just what it is. Jamie won't disagree with me on that. And, you know, I'm never going to be one to say we should do this or shouldn't do that. But what I will say is this. People go out to Pure. We all signed up for it, number one. And number two, we're trying to make a difference. I've got a 7 and a 9-year-old. That's why I started serving 7 years ago. And that's why I'm going to serve my 8th and final year this year and go back home. We're trying to do what's best for South Dakota. Now, how we get there might look different. And what he thinks and I think might not be the same. But I think what still does work in South Dakota, as much as people don't always want to agree, is that we can figure it out. And our process works. It does work. And so that's where I stand on it right now.
Representative Smith, your reaction.
First of all, that was a very eloquent answer to a very tough question, Ken. So, because that was a damning editorial of our legislature. And I can tell you right now that if Kent Peterson and myself were out there, and he can't probably say this because he's the majority leader right now, you probably wouldn't see some of those bills coming forward because we'd be focusing in on taking care of some pretty significant just problems that we both agree on right out the get-go, that these are the problems of the state, and we'd like to make those first and foremost on our side. I get extremely frustrated with the posturing that happens. We have people running for, you know, governor within the House. We have people running right now for I believe running for Congress against Dusty Johnson. You're going to see a couple people posturing big time right there. They're on appropriations. They're going to show you how conservative they can be with everything they say. And it absolutely frustrates me to no end, but it's part of the process. It is part of the process. My frustration comes that for about the same number, this is my 6th year, his 8th, we've seen things pop up, we kill them. They pop up, we kill them. It's like whack-a-mole. I mean, these things pop up, we kill them. Pop up, we kill them. And they just keep trying to wear us down to the point where, what can we change just a little bit more, this way, that way? And it's the same folks bringing a lot of the same things, a little bit of change here, a little bit of change there. And it's not a Republican Democrat thing necessarily on some of these things. That's their viewpoint of the world. That's where they live. But the other thing I want you to notice, and I think the article talks about it, a lot of times the people that come to testify for these things aren't from the state of South Dakota. We're a litmus test. How conservative can we be? What can we pass? You know, what can we do here in South Dakota? Because if it works there, well, we can try it over here. And I have people in the legislature that I know they do that. They drop it here, they run it here, and then before you know it, they're into the next state trying to run that bill. And that's frustrating. You know what? If we were a blue state, we'd be doing the same thing probably on the other side, the other way. I'm not going to say we wouldn't. But I have the luxury of being a Democrat and peer with only 8 of us. And I can say, hey, you're running to see how conservative you can be, and I don't agree with that. All right? And so I have that ability within my caucus to do that. I only got 8. I got to try to work together with. He's got 62. His job's way harder than mine.
Well, let's jump right into some of the major issues and concerns facing our state. We're about to start our 3rd year with this pandemic. It's affected everything, hasn't it? The latest data, and this was out on Friday, nearly 2,600 South Dakotans have died of COVID, almost 27,000 active cases, 350 hospitalizations. Our vaccination rate now is sitting at about 58%. Our governor, we heard in the state address, very proud of how robust our economy is, how well we're doing on everything from tax revenue to how our businesses are doing and so forth. But how do you assess the governor and her administration's performance during COVID? Jamie Smith.
You know, the governor had an incredibly hard job to do. There's no doubt about that. But there were many opportunities missed. All right. I don't say that we should have put the whole state into lockdown. I think putting kids in school is the right thing to do. I think it was the safest place for many of our kids to be. For some of our children, COVID isn't the biggest thing that was their safety threat. Okay. For some of them, it's a lot of other things. So I'm going to agree on that. But that being said, there are more things that we could have done. I look at the cities right now of Vermilion and Brookings, for example. Brookings took a harder line on masks and things like that. And if you look at the numbers that came out of Brookings versus Vermilion, similar towns, Brookings fared better. Brookings fared better, okay, through that science. You know, different cities made different choices. I wish as a legislature, we would have let our cities and counties make those choices for their area. We voted on a bill that said we couldn't do that within our state. The governor tried to push that down the line. I also think our governor has the opportunity where she says we have freedom, and I agree we got freedom to do the right thing. Well, your freedom ends when your behavior impacts my safety. All right, we don't smoke in restaurants anymore, right? Those types of things. So when we impact somebody else's safety, and that's where I come to. So I think we could have done a better job of promoting vaccinations and boosters in our state. And wearing masks when applicable out there. I think we could lessen the thing. Are people going to get COVID? Yeah. But I'm not resigned to the fact that we have people that have died in our state that didn't need to. And so that's where I feel on that. Kent?
Representative Peterson.
Sure. You know, COVID is something that unfortunately we've learned to deal with and live with. And I don't know if that's going to be changing anytime soon, to be honest with you. The governor had a very hard job, as Jamie said, and I wouldn't have envied anyone in that position. The position that she and her administration took was to let us use our responsibility to make the right choices within our businesses, within our communities, and so on and so forth. And so I agree with that. With that being said, you know, looking back, is there things that could have been done differently? It's easy to say that now. But for the most part, I would say things worked the way they were supposed to. And as Jamie said, you know, we lost people. That's unfortunately the reality of this pandemic. And it's been awful. We all know people. One of our colleagues was probably one of the first deaths in South Dakota, Representative Bob Glanzer from Huron. And at that time, we had no idea what we were walking into. We had a closed-door legislator-only meeting with the governor with all the legislature talking about the first 3 cases in South Dakota. Little did we know what the world was going to be looking like. And so, you know, on the other hand, though, our economy is very strong. And some of the things that were not done to hold things back worked. And because of that, our economy is as strong as it's ever been in South Dakota. Some might argue because of the federal dollars. I don't agree with that completely. Our revenue is up almost 15% year over year. That's not an accident. Things are really working. And so we have to take all of them into account. And it's easy to throw stones when you're not the one being thrown at, right? But we still have to always, hopefully learn from what we see, because there's going to be something else that comes, whether we like it or not. And we have to be ready to handle it and learn from the folks that have done it in front of us and try to do better if there's ways to do better.
Can I add one thing to that?
Go ahead.
I wish the governor would give credit to where I believe, and you touched on it, Mr. Leader, but the federal government gave the state a whole lot of money. A whole lot of money. And if you look at our GDP numbers, as opposed to the money spent, but what we've actually produced in output within our state, it's not near as rosy as the picture of money spent for our tax revenues, all right? Because there's a ton of money floating around the state right now. And the governor didn't give the federal government credit for that in her speech. She bashed the federal government, bashed them. And 5 of the 6 sources of revenue that came from federal spending, 5 of them were during Trump's administration. So they blame Biden for, that's 5 of them came when Trump was president.
Well, let's shift attention to the budget because of this influx of federal money, as well as very robust state tax revenue. The governor lays out a proposal of $5.7 billion. That's an increase of almost $1.5 billion over fiscal year 2021. Where are the 2 caucuses aligned in the budget priorities for the coming year, and where do you differ?
A good question. I think,
In some cases, you have one-time money. In other cases, maybe we can sustain the.
We can go to both sides. We have ongoing revenue, our year-over-year money, and then the one-time dollars. I think when you look at the ongoing revenue, the governor's proposed a 6% kind of across the board for state aid to education, which isn't necessarily state aid to teachers. They would make a proportion of that, state employees, and then our Medicaid providers. I would say there's quite a bit of agreement between both sides. These are going to want to say we're going to need to do more, probably,
Just a little
to keep up with inflation, right? But the reality is we have what we have. And so I think we're both on board with that. There's going to be a lot of other things infrastructure-wise. The governor's laid out $600 million for water projects. I think that's a great idea. How we do that, we're still figuring that out. $200 million for housing. We've had a housing study this summer. I think we're going to have agreement on that. What are the particulars on some of those things? And then there is a lot of other things that kind of fall in and out. We agree on, even though people don't like to talk about it, on way more things than we disagree on.
Do you both agree that these one-time dollars coming from the feds should be used more for infrastructure rather than ongoing expenses? Are you in alignment there?
I would say in general, yes, that is true. We shouldn't use one-time monies for, something that we know is an ongoing expense. But if there are things we can do to get some things started that'll increase new revenue sources and things like that that are ongoing, I think that would be where we maybe differ just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say I don't want to take any of these one-time dollars and start new programs in South Dakota that we don't know what the payer source is going to be 2 years from now. That's just bad fiscal responsibility, in my opinion. And so I think we got to make sure if we're using existing programs, that's one thing, or if we're investing, putting water pipe in the ground, that's going to make Aberdeen better. That's good for South Dakota in general. So I think we got to really be careful as what we use these dollars for.
So there's Smith, where do you think the difference is going to occur between the two caucuses?
How we can take some of this different money and where they're going. If it's fixed projects or if it's who's getting the tax rebate, where the money's going to. Is it going to the developer? Is it going directly to the end user? Those types of things I think we're going to probably differ a little bit on. The other thing is I still think there's room and that's written into the thing for some performance pay and things like that for some of this dollar that was designed to help people that struggled through COVID, and I think to give a boost to some of those people. So, we've had people work in our grocery stores, people that were on the front lines of medicine and nursing homes and things like that. It's written into the bill that we can give those people like basically a hey, thank you, you know, and that would go back into our economy and turn over, be one-time money. There's really no appetite across the aisle, but we're going to keep working for that. I don't know where you're at on this one too, but there's $28 million in this budget for a prison out west for women. I think we both agree that we have a problem with too many women in our prison system. Do we need to build another bricks and mortar prison in
Do you
Rapid
think so?
City?
Should we?
I think we should do something more with treatment. These 70% of these people are there for drugs and alcohol. So I would like to incorporate it into some form of, if we are building another jail, it really has to be also a treatment facility for drugs and alcohol.
Any other major headlines in terms of infrastructure projects? Ken, you said, housing, water projects.
There's,
I know that we're now talking about spending money in the state university system on bricks and mortar, which has, the legislature has not been overly generous for some time when it comes to.
Can we talk about the water real quick, the 600 million? So there's over $2 billion of requests already? Three, yeah, it's up to 3 now, okay, because it was 2.4 just a couple of weeks ago. It seems like it's up to $3 billion worth of requests for infrastructure, water projects that have to be done in 5 years. All right, the governor's saying 600 million. One of the reasons the governor's picked that is because there's a program in place that has the criteria and everything, so we can get that money in and out the door. And that's why that was, because as Kent said, that he didn't want to develop any other programs, right? That program exists. We know we can get the money out the door, because the other thing we risk is not spending that money. All right, and that's a very big reality too. But I agree. Are there things we could have done at the university? I mean, Kent really did a great job bringing us something up to Brookings there. It took $20 million last year, I believe it was 20 for what was the name of it?
Bioprocessing.
Yeah. Are there other ideas like that we could do too? Because we both agree.
I've got one.
Do you?
Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll probably support it, won't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you know why? Those are great investments in our state. So that's the infrastructure, but I also believe in doing something for the people. And if you got an idea like that, I can get behind it.
I've got a bill coming, $15 million I'm going to be asking for the legislature, not in the governor's budget right now, to create a biomedical research facility at the research park here right in Sioux Falls. We've let so many things go by because we didn't have facilities in place as they've come through. And I think, we've got a beautiful place out there, and people say, why don't you just have these developers do it? Well, they haven't done it. They haven't done it. And because we have an opportunity here in front of us, and we have some dollars that we can take one time and turn into something, I think, that can turn into jobs and opportunity for our kids for years and years to come. That's why we did what we did in Brookings last year at the research park. It's an opportunity to take what we have right here, right now, soybeans, corn, all these other things, and turn them into a product that we don't even know exists yet. And then hopefully keep our kids here, because you know what we're really good at in South Dakota? We're training our kids, the best and the brightest, and watching them go across the road.
So if we're taking these
And we agree right now, write that down. We agree 100% on everything you just said. All right.
Okay, I've heard you both say that one-time dollars essentially are going to go for a capital budget, right? And that leaves the operating budget. We know that state tax revenues they exceeded projections last year by over $100 million. The governor has said across the board pay increases. You mentioned higher reimbursement rates for Medicaid services and other things. What are other ways in which you think the state government should take on more expenditures and more programs? We heard from the state's Chief Justice last week that he's looking for money for courthouse security. We hear from the counties that they feel overly burdened with the expense of the judicial system and the criminal justice system. What are some of the things that you both would support in terms of the state government taking on a greater burden?
You want to start? I'll go. Those two items that you just mentioned, I think we can get behind and support. I really think that we have to also look, and he mentioned that I think we need a little higher number than the 6%. I don't think we're even matching inflation right now if we do the new numbers on that. when we see what we're doing. So we're not giving anybody a raise. When we do a 6% increase, they're not getting a real, you got to remember that. And I know a lot of you are employers out there, you're facing the same things right now. We do have to get our numbers up in so many areas, though. I know at the penitentiary, for example, we just moved our starting salaries up to like $20 an hour there. But the problem with that is the next closest place to us was Nebraska. Other ones around us pay a lot more. They just raised theirs to $28 an hour. All right. So everything's shifting up. So the cost of people to do the jobs of the important things we need to do in the state is rising. I think we need to make sure we take care of those people to do the jobs they need. I also think we need to spend more money in when it comes to mental health. And the other one, I've had multiple meetings with child care, and that's something the governor has some money on for some fixed income. I think we need to do something with child care. I also believe that we need to spend more money on getting our nursing home match number up, because right now it's just out of
You're talking about Medicaid reimbursement?
Yeah. When I was out at Dow Rummel a week ago, they turned the lights on, and for every person in their Medicaid, they lose $40 a day on each of the people in there, and so that's just a real struggle for them.
Representative Peterson.
Yeah, no, all good ideas. The reality of it is we have to get to ideas we can agree on. And while most of those I think we can, there are some maybe that we can't. And the Medicaid reimbursement is a huge issue. We rebase every so many years in South Dakota.
5, I believe.
Depending on, yep. And so, those are coming up. We just did a pretty substantial increase for our community support providers last year. We did the nursing homes a couple years before that. We have others that are coming up. And so the challenge is workforce. I mean, you guys know that every single day with what you're doing. And as we drive wages up, that also drives wages up for everyone here in South Dakota. And that's a real issue. Inflation is not going away. I think hopefully the Federal Reserve is going to do something about trying to hold that back here in the coming year. But it's just what it is right now. And so we have to be very careful as we're budgeting here going forward, I think, so that we don't walk our state off a cliff either. And whether we like it or not, we have to talk about it. We're up $127 million of ongoing revenue year over year. And actually the last month was another 20 million more, $150 million year over year, almost 18%. That is not sustainable in South Dakota. And if we were in the public sector, private sector, we'd think that's awesome. Public sector, it scares me. And we have to be very aware as we're budgeting. And the governor has done some for that, by putting some reserves, and we did some last year, putting some into reserves for the future without a earmark. Our reserves are up to 14%. We're required to have 10%. And so I think some of those things are things we have to look at. But ultimately, it comes down to us balancing our budget, and we agree on that. And we're going to continue to do that.
Constitutionally, we have to have a balanced budget. So we pat ourselves on the back each year that we balanced our budget. We have to.
It's a starting and an ending point for sure.
I want to run through a number of issues, and I would ask you to keep your answers brief and on the point. The governor last week said that our income is so robust that we should consider reducing some taxes, reducing some fees. She then gave 3 examples: dropping fees for new business filings, ending the bingo tax, ending application fees for concealed carry permits, and then reimbursing the cost of federal background checks. Are the governor's priorities, are you in alignment with the governor's priorities in terms of taxation reform?
Yes.
Not with those reforms.
Okay, thank you. Medicaid expansion. Senator Wayne Steinauer is loudly advocating for the expansion of Medicaid eligibility to head off the effects of a statewide ballot initiative, which of course would lock in specific provisions. Do you favor the expansion of Medicaid this session?
I haven't in the past, and although I will be looking at that one closely because Wayne's looking at it a little differently than we have in the past, I would say I haven't supported it. I don't know that I'm likely to support it, but it's a different approach, and we also have the looming constitutional amendment coming at us. Right. I think that's part of the issue that he's looking at. So there's some folks that maybe wouldn't have taken a close look at this before that are now. Obviously, anything that passes has to go through the governor and sustain a veto.
Okay. Representative Smith.
I'm for Medicaid expansion.
Very good. The governor said a lot over the last year or so about what she describes as honest, patriotic education. That is that the state should start weighing in on curriculum when it comes to civics, when it comes to history, when it comes to social studies. She is advocating that we block what she calls action civics, and that we ban the teaching of critical race theory in K-12 as well as our public universities. Agree or disagree?
I would agree.
That's not, they're making up problems that don't exist. As a former educator, it absolutely infuriates me that we're telling our teachers how to teach.
Okay, marijuana legalization, recreational marijuana. Amendment A passed decisively. Of course, the governor was opposed to the legalization of marijuana for recreational purposes, went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, nope, it's not. There were problems with too much detail in the constitutional amendment. But we now know, at least among the voters of this state, what the will of the people is. What is your position on the legalization of marijuana for recreational purposes?
I'm not for it. And back to your point, that constitutional measure was ruled unconstitutional because it embraced more than one subject.
Correct.
And so they just, ruled on that, which I think was the correct ruling.
I am for it. I believe we should tax and regulate marijuana in our state. I wasn't, that's the will of the people, and I think we should follow it.
Okay. But Kent, what about the will of the people?
I think it's very important. Last year we also had the medical marijuana issue that was passed by an overwhelming majority of South Dakotans. And we took a really hard look at that. Ultimately, what we were proposing last year was to make sure we had enough time to implement a safe and effective program. No changes were made, but there are some changes that are coming. And so I think the will of the people was upheld on that completely. And, the will of the people on the recreational marijuana was a much smaller margin, but also something that, they were voting on something that wasn't legal for the ballot. And so I think that when that happens, you have to move on to whatever comes next. And I'm guessing we're going to see another one here next year.
Abortion. The governor is now saying that we should make abortions illegal at 6 weeks, essentially 6 weeks, since that's when it's believed that a heartbeat can be detected. Your position on that? I'm in favor of that.
I believe abortion should be rare but legal, and I don't think we should bring this law.
All right. Statewide poll done said that only 25% of the people of the state think that the restrictions on abortion should be any tighter. Is that also a case where the state legislature should pay attention to the will of the people?
Obviously, the legislature can pay attention to that, but that comes down to me in my beliefs and what I believe in. And I've been pro-life since I've been in Pierre, and I'm not planning to change this year.
Okay, let's go cover the transgender issue. The governor is proposing that transgender girls be prevented from playing on girls' sports teams. And there are other bills, I think, that have now been filed that would restrict bathroom use to the gender assigned at birth. Your positions on that?
The terrible bills, we've already worked on these multiple times. We've stopped them multiple times. Here they are again. It's a very vulnerable population, our trans persons in our communities, and to be picked on one more time just drives me crazy.
Representative Peterson?
Yeah, no, I understand what Representative Smith is saying, but there's a different viewpoint in that as well. As a dad of a daughter, when you look at what is coming down the pike, is this an issue in South Dakota right now? It's debatable. But is this something that, should it ever happen here, we want to have it be ready to go? So yeah, I supported the governor last year, and I'll support them then this year.
The one thing,
do you differentiate between those two issues, the so-called bathroom bill as opposed to girls in sports?
We had the bathroom bill, I believe, my first year in Pierre in 2015, if I recall. Representative Fred Deutsch brought that. He's the same one bringing it again. And that passed overwhelmingly. Ultimately, it was vetoed, and the veto wasn't overridden. I haven't looked closely at the bill to see how it mirrors that one. I supported that one 7 years ago, but we'll need to look at this to see, is it really an issue? And when I do that, I'll be able to let you know.
Okay. Well, let's take the girls and girls sports. The NCAA allows it. The Olympics allows it. The High School Activities Association has a whole, a whole procedure for determining whether or not a trans girl can play in competitive scholastic sports. Reaction to that.
You just gave my answer. There are entities in place that make sure sport is fair. All right, and that's their job. We as a legislature don't need to come in and say, and now we regulate sport too. And now we're micromanaging things that we don't need to manage. There are things in place to make sure that sport is fair in our state.
I don't disagree with that, but there also comes a time when there's things that, some folks believe we need to say, there's a line in the sand right here on this one, and it's not okay one way or the other. And, ultimately, we'll see if this passes. I don't know. It came out of the Senate State Affairs Committee, which it didn't last year, with an overwhelming majority on Friday. And so it'll go to the Senate floor, I believe, Wednesday, and we'll see what comes, and we'll take it when we get it.
Why do you think this State Affairs Committee in the Senate flipped on that issue?
I think it's because it's the governor's bill this year.
I can't answer that. I don't, know if what their rationale is behind it. People that voted against it last year, voting for it this year. I know there was an amendment put on that says any legal fees would be directed or be defended by the state if any of these entities,
against
schools, are brought to action. And so, I don't know if that had any bearing on it or not. But it's the issue in front of us today, and we'll see. I'm assuming that's going to come out of the Senate and come over to the House. We also have one sitting in the House right now from Representative Rhonda Milstead, very similar to the bill she had last year. That was ultimately style and form vetoed and not overridden. And so we'll see as we compare those to each other, if something ultimately makes muster or if it's not the right time.
How much, what's the impact of the governor's position? I mean, how powerful is the governor now in determining whether or not a bill like this will be passed?
Oh, obviously, if you think that, there's not going to be a veto, there's, a different vote threshold required.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really that simple. And so if it's something that the governor's pushing, an idea that what this or anything else, it really doesn't matter, that she is behind, as me as a legislator working on something, if I know that they're in favor of it, it's a different ballgame. And 36 is a lot easier to get to than 47. It's just numbers. And so that's the amount of votes it takes. And whether it's this issue or any of the other issues or, things not in the social realm. We seem like we talk a lot about the social issues, and we're doing it day to day, right? That's just what it is.
And that's I absolutely hate the social bills because they suck up all the oxygen in the room. And we defend them, and we work hard against them, either side that you're on. But there are so many other things too that we need to talk about.
Let's talk about prayer in schools, in public schools. We've heard from the governor. She said, in public schools, prayer is absent. It is forbidden. That I think is debatable, but that's the position that she has taken. And she is now advocating that there be a mandatory moment of silence in public schools daily to allow students to pray.
I have no problem with taking a minute to do something, but I was a public school teacher for 7 years, and I tell you, I prayed every day. All right? I prayed every day that I was a public school teacher in that school. I can pray right now. There's nothing stopping me from praying. There's no law stopping me from praying. There's no law stopping any of my students from praying when I was a teacher. I don't think it's an issue. I think it's, again, a nice soundbite.
I would actually agree with Representative Smith on this one. One of my colleagues told me, yeah, I used to pray every time the math test came, right? And
You're stealing Troy's joke.
Well, it was not. It wasn't him. And so, I think you can pray in school right now. I don't know on a public forum. That maybe is a different story, but we'll see. This one might be an interesting path.
Let's talk about election integrity. Huge national debate. Not a lot of discussion here in South Dakota, but we have thousands and thousands of non-residents who are registered to vote in South Dakota, and many of them do vote. They use forwarding mail services, and so they claim an address in South Dakota. They may register a vehicle. I think we have 60,000 vehicles registered by out-of-staters. Is this an issue of election integrity that should be dealt with in our state? The fact that we have thousands of non-residents who are registered to vote in South Dakota?
Well, I think they're not non-residents. I think residency in the state of South Dakota is fairly easy.
They don't live here.
You're correct. And so I would agree with you on my concern there. And I've often thought, I pay taxes. I own a cabin in Minnesota, and I pay non-resident taxes over there because I don't live there half plus one. And I often thought that maybe you have to live in South Dakota, half plus one. But I don't know how you necessarily do that. I also thought if you're going to have a car registered here, but you actually don't live here, should we maybe charge them a different fee at least to get something for the benefit of being a South Dakotan? I don't know what that looks like. I've been concerned about the same issue. We've delved into it. It's a hard one. It's a hard issue. But yeah, right here in my district, District 15, we have mailboxes where I believe 700 people live in their mailbox. It's hard to live in a mailbox.
This is an interesting issue that we've looked at, I think, once or twice over my 7 years, and ultimately nothing's been done. Talk about election integrity in South Dakota. I think our elections are very strong and safe. You know why? We show up and we bring out our ID and we say, here's who I am, and we vote with a paper ballot. And guess what? It works. And I don't see that changing. And I think the biggest thing is we need to make sure these people are who they say they are. And we might differ on if you can show up the day of and vote. I don't agree with that. I think we should know, and you should have gone through the process. But on this one, where people that maybe don't live here all the time, we also don't know that either. And so I think we have to look into that. But
well, you say we don't know that. In Pennington County, there's one address that has 6,300 registered voters.
That's an issue. Yeah, we got to look at that.
We'll look at that. How should we tell them that?
Yeah.
Okay. Kent and I will look at that together.
Yeah,
We'll see
very
if we can find some bipartisan support on this one or not. Okay.
You both are part of this committee that is looking into the impeachment of our Attorney General, Jason Brownsburg. In fact, I think you both are, maybe you're carpooling to Pierre after this session. I know you can't go into the details of testimony or anything else, but give us a sense of how this process is going to unfold as our Attorney General faces possible impeachment and removal from office.
I will take that, and my only statement on that is, and it's not just going to be that we can't talk about that. The process is underway, and the time frame of that process, we don't know. And so please know that Kent and I, as we sit here today, are a part of that. And that's what we can say. Tomorrow, there will be public testimony for 2 days here, I believe, Kent, this week, correct? Mm-hmm. And so today we have a meeting, and tomorrow there are 2 more, and that's all we can say about that.
Nothing else to add.
Very good. Well, I want to give both of you an opportunity to, anything I didn't touch on that you want to close with, and then we're going to wrap this up.
It was really great football yesterday and the day before watching that. What did you think, Ken? Huh?
I think we had a little here today. It's all right,
Hey, it's all good. No, I want to say thank you to the Rotary for having us back again. They let us do this last year, and they put up with us again this year. So I guarantee you this, that it's not going to be the 2 of us sitting here next year giving you the state of the state with Kent not running again. And I'm not sure what the plans are for Jamie Smith. And I just always have appreciated this group of people. I look out, see friends from both sides of the aisle. I'm glad I'm here. And I thank you for the work that you do in our community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jack and Rotary, for having us. It's always a good discussion. Sometimes we don't have the answers to all the questions. And that's the reality. I'm not going to lie to you. And there's things we do have to look at. And so I think, though, to a person, what I said earlier still holds true. All of us that go out to Pierre are doing it for a reason. My reason is my 2 kids and trying to make South Dakota better. I think if we can get past being a Republican and a Democrat and being South Dakotans, things work a lot better. And honestly, it happens more than you think, even though people don't tell you. And so things are good here in South Dakota. We still have to keep working, but our best days are still in front of us. And so thank you all for having us, and have a great day.
This is hard work, you know. For them, these are citizen legislators. They don't do it for the money, believe me, and that yet they're willing to come here and be held accountable by someone who has a lot of questions. And I just want to thank both of these gentlemen for being so responsive, for their commitment to public service. So please join me in thanking them for being with us today.
Well said, Jack. Thank you, Jack, for covering a lot of ground. Thank you, Kent and Jamie, for your willingness to be here, for serving our state and helping propel us forward. I want to thank you for joining us today and ask that you consider joining us next Monday. We're going to have Secretary Jim Hagan from the South Dakota Department of Tourism, as well as Terry Schmidt, Executive Director of Experience Sioux Falls. They have their tourism conference this week, and they'll be here fresh off that to talk about what is happening in our state with regards to tourism. With that, Rotary is adjourned. Have a great week.